Mali is a former French colony. Every French president comes into office saying it's the end of what we call here La France-Afrique, which is, the cozy relationship between France and its former colonies. This, though, is radically different kind of talk. We just heard there the French president praising the work of Europe in fighting the jihadists in northern Mali. That is something new.
It is something new. It's been going on for a couple of years. Basically, the subtext of this whole discussion is France-Afrique is still alive. I mean, the commercial relationship, the political relationship with a certain number of countries between Paris and them, it's pretty much alive. But the other side, which is security and defense, is very important. And the French acknowledge their natural ambition and role on this issue, but they need help financially, militarily, equipment, support, and that's why they're trying to mutualize their defense effort in Africa and maybe somewhere else in the world by saying to other Europeans, we are at the forehead of this, but you're in with us. The situation in Mali, Burkina, Niger, the Sahel, the jihadists, it's concerning the whole of Europe, the whole of the European Union, so you should participate.
And this, we can argue, has ramifications well beyond Africa because we're in a context right now where Donald Trump is blowing hot and cold over the U.S. shouldering the burden for NATO. Macron coming into office saying he'd like the revival of that idea of a Franco-German motor to European defense.
Yes, it's the old classic idea of that the EU should bear more efforts to defend itself. Some of the people that were against that were the British. Basically, they don't want the European defense thing. So the Brexit is also changing the whole strategical thinking around that. But at the end of it, we're talking about money. We're talking about budgets. We're talking about involvement. I mean, the Germans, they should put their budget to defense budget to 2% of GDP. Other European countries should do the same. So at the end of it, we're talking about how can we reallocate budgets toward the European defense. How can we deal with issues of governance? How can we deal with issues of commandments and all that stuff? But if you look at the map, which are the countries that are able to project force? The French and the British today. If the British if they leave Europe, which is probably the case, you leave the French alone. So they accept this role, but they're telling to the other guys, the Germans in particular, we should move together, and specifically on the financial equipment involvement issues.
All right, more than 6 decades after the French left Africa, there still is that tight-knit bond with former French-speaking colonies, which constitute something of a voting bloc at times at the UN. There's lots of business ties. Emmanuel Macron coming in office, your sister publication, Jeune Afrique, writing that there was a whiff of panic among African leaders because they don't have a Macron network. In fact, I think there was the son of one opposition leader in Congo who, because his picture was taken at a campaign event for Macron, that's created a big stir. Who's got the in? How do you get the in with Macron?
I'm not sure that the Africans were specific on this issue. I mean, like everybody else, they know they want to deal with people they know, and they didn't know Macron, and they knew Fillon, and they knew the socialists, and they know Le Drian, which is still a very important person.
And who's on that trip? Le Drian is now the foreign minister.
Foreign minister.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just a question of being comfortable with some people that we know their families, it's kind of bonding and friendships, and so they have to deal with this new gentleman. He's young, and this new gentleman is calling also to younger people in Africa. Because if you look at the generation gap in Africa, it's pretty strong. I mean, you have all those powerful people in politics, in business, in civil society, but they're all above 40s, above 50s, above 60 years old, above 70 years
Emmanuel
old.
Macron was 1 year old when Equatorial Guinea's strongman came to power.
But most of these younger leaders, I'm talking in terms of business, politics, civil society, they look at this guy and say, why can't we do the same? How can we shake up the whole structure of our own society? So it's quite interesting. About France-Afrique, I think there's a lot of phantasms and fantasy around that. The French are powerful, but they're not that powerful in Africa. China, other Asian countries, Turkey, the Gulf countries, all those people are having a stake today in Africa. Most of these people are trying to invest, are trying to gain deals, and the Africans are getting pretty good at playing with different players, raising the stakes, raising the bidding, and I don't think this whole French thing is still. Yes, politically at the higher level, they know each other, but in terms of real business, in terms of real involvement, in terms of real policies, France is not anymore the African powerhouse.
Be it when it was Nicolas Sarkozy or François Hollande and now Emmanuel Macron, they come into office seemingly not really knowing where Africa is on the map, but they learn very quickly.
Yes, but you also have about 350 or 400 million people speaking French in Africa, so it's not something you just discard. But real power today is business, economics. If the French if they don't have the wealth and the will to invest, to be in partnerships, etc., other will do. And the African market is a big market. It's huge. It's complicated. It's tempting, and so a lot of people are coming in. And you know, the nouveau monde, as we say in French, the new world, is also applying to Africa.
Also applying to Africa, what are your reporting teams on the ground saying about how when they see the election of Emmanuel Macron? What's their reaction?
My God, depend the age of the. I think people are feeling that something is changing. People are also waiting to see if change is only age or if you have to deliver. Basically, now Macron has to deliver, so we'll see. We'll see if he will bring change to this Africa policy network. Can he change things? Can he promote business? Can he promote French investment? There is probably a European thing to do, because maybe we could work through Brussels to bring more investment to Africa. So people are surprised that the French were able to make this move. People are relieved that Marine Le Pen is not president, but they're just looking and waiting to see if things will really change for them.
One final question for you, Zyad Liman. The Malians themselves, because after the French lead that force in 2013 that pushes back the insurgency, there was something they thought of a peace dividend for the president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, a chance to reconcile different parts of the country, and that he may have perhaps blown it a little bit.
It's a very good question, because there is something which is not said, basically. The French operation was able to stop the jihadis, but if we look at the situation since 2013, you see that the north of Mali is still very, very fragile. There is a lot of jihadi movements going around. There was a terrible attack January with 70 soldiers dead, African soldiers, so nobody cares. This whole issue is about just sending the army and stopping the jihadis. We see that it's not leading anywhere. We see that nation rebuilding is complicated. We see that growth is complicated. We see that governance is complicated. And the French, there is inside the French government and the political circles who are in society, they are warning of some kind of I don't want to say Afghanistan-style issue, but a never-ending involvement if you don't solve other issues, which are governance, structure, education, poverty. And this needs more than the French. This needs a global effort for Mali, but for Burkina, for Niger, for the whole Sahelian region.
Zyad Liman of Afrique magazine, many thanks for being with us.
Many thanks to you.